When I was a child, on my PlayStation 1, I had one game, one platformer, and one iconic character. Unfortunately, that game was this. I'm honestly starting to question if my parents actually loved me. In the Crash Bandicoot series, however, I've played one game, Wrath of Cortex, and though I haven't played the game since I was a child, my thoughts can pretty much be summed up as: ball rolling is fun, this mech sucks, oh my god Crash, hurry up, why is there a Bandicoot that's jacked? If I'm finally going to give this series a shot as an adult, I might as well start with the first. But which version am I going to play? The PS1 original or the remake on the PS4? Well, why not both? Let's finally find out if this series is worth a shot, and find out what the hell a Bandicoot is on this episode of No-stalgia. Crash Bandicoot stars, well, Crash Bandicoot, a marsupial native to Australia who is experimented on by Neo Cortex. Crash manages to escape, but he has to travel back to Cortex's castle to rescue his sex doll? Oh, his girlfriend. What is it with mascots in the 90s getting girlfriends that can only be described as furry fuel? Well, at least that's something that definitely stayed in the 90s. Oh, for God's sake.
Damn, boy, he's thick!
The opening cutscene is great, and given so much life in the Insane trilogy. The voice acting is definitely a step up from the original.
This time, I shall reign triumphant.
Originally, it sounded a little bit off, especially Cortex.
This time I shall reign triumphant.
Once you hit the title screen, it's clear just how much effort got put into the graphics and the animation. A third of the polygons are allocated to Crash alone, which was unheard of at the time. He looks so lively, showing off his Looney Tunes inspiration. Bet you can't wait to see how it's recreated in the remake. Oh. Well, I'm only very disappointed. Well, first off, you're dropped off on Insanity Beach, the first level that's become as iconic as Green Hill Zone, Pallet Town, and Bricks? Can I just say, the game looks so good. So many vibrant locales and detail on the character models. But hear me out. I think, in some ways, the original looks better. Now, obviously, if you're talking about graphics and the amount of polygons, the Insane trilogy is way better than the PlayStation 1 would ever be able to handle. But as far as the art style is concerned, I gotta say, I kinda prefer the original. The darker and gloomier levels feel more atmospheric. A lot of the environments feel more cartoony and stylised. I even have a soft spot for Crash's PS1 character model, and though I like his new design, I think from certain angles it can look a little bit ugly. Regardless of which one you play, however, the gameplay still remains the same for the most part. So if you've been living under a rock, Crash Bandicoot is a 3D platformer. However, it's got a lot more in common with Sonic than Mario. In Mario 64 you've got big open levels with multiple objectives. Crash on the other hand is linear, where the objective is to simply get to the end. This allows not only better graphics due to the smaller area requiring less console power, but also stricter platforming challenges. There is great variety in the levels. Sometimes you're running forward, sometimes you're moving from left to right like a 2D platformer, other times you're running away from a boulder, and sometimes Crash is jacking a pig. The levels show a fantastic sense of progression as you go from jungles to temples to factories, with Cortex's castle always looming in the distance. As for what you're doing in these levels, while Crash can jump, he can do a spin attack. Yeah, that's it. I understand why Crash would have a limited moveset, especially on the PS1 being the first game in the series. But on the PS4, I would have loved to see some of the moves implemented from the sequels, like the slide or the belly flop. Not including them makes Crash 1 seem so primitive, when there was obviously an opportunity to put the game on par with its sequels. When Crash is jumping and spinning through the levels, he controls very differently in both versions. The control changes were extremely controversial when it first released. Game journalists were calling Crash 1 the Dark Souls of platforming. Well, first of all, I've not played Dark Souls, so I'm guessing it's the Crash Bandicoot of action role-playing games. And secondly, did you even play the PlayStation original? The game developers admitted that they made the game way too hard.
Yeah, so I think the result was the first game is very uneven and way too hard. And we certainly, and there was one level, Road to Nowhere, that I designed that was unplayable. And we have to keep making it easier and easier. And even the version that shipped, people hate to this day because it's too hard. Because I didn't know anything about level design. I was just hacking at it, right?
Also, the game has the most baffling save function. There are two ways to save your game. Either you find 3 Torna tokens in a specific level and beat the challenge without dying, or you complete the level with a gem. How do you get a gem? Well, you have to smash every single box in the level without dying. This is the most punishing save function I've ever seen in a game. If you just want to play this game casually, you can't, because you have to be good enough at the game for the privilege of saving your game.
Good players had infinite lives because they earned them all, and bad players who needed the lives couldn't earn them, which was a huge mistake.
Earn your save games. I mean, who came up with that?
The Insane Trilogy not only saves after completing every level, but to get the gems, you still have to smash all the boxes, but you can die as much as you want, provided you don't get a game over. Expecting someone to smash all the boxes and not die is an awful requirement, and thankfully is not in any subsequent games. Crash 1 is definitely the hardest of the PS1 titles, mainly due to its over-reliance on strict platforming. Asking which version of Crash controls better is very hard to answer. On the PS1, Crash's jumping arc is very slow and a little bit floaty, whereas Insane Crash falls a lot faster and I feel a lot more in control. On the other hand, PS1 Crash jumps a little bit further, allowing levels like the high road to be a lot easier to perform. In Insane, you basically have to be right on the edge of a platform when you're jumping. So I honestly couldn't say which version I prefer, however the quality of life improvements probably make the remake a more viable option. Though both suffer from a camera issue. The camera is way too zoomed in, especially for backtracking, and a small shadow that tells you where you're going to land can be really hard to see in some of the darker levels. Probably the biggest change to the Insane Trilogy is the addition of time trials. There are 3 tiers of relics: Sapphire, Gold and Platinum. Now these are obtained by getting certain times, and are abysmal, mainly because the levels weren't constructed with speed in mind. I managed to get gold on all of them to get the platinum trophy, but there is no way I was getting the platinum relics. I'm pretty sure I spent so long on the high road, I was starting to lose my mind.
Oh! Donkey! Donkey! Yeah!
Luckily, getting all the gems does offer you a reward. You get these platforms in the Great Hall made out of all the gems that you've collected over your adventure. This not only allows you to get a secret ending, but you can also skip the final boss entirely. On one hand, this is a really cool inclusion, but if you're good enough at the game that you can smash every single box without dying, fighting Cortex would be the least of your problems. The bosses on the whole are a bit bland, and to be honest a little repetitive, though I do love the designs of the characters. Ripperoo is probably my favourite, mainly because he's the perfect representation of my mental state this year. Cortex is definitely the most difficult boss, but also probably the best, with some pretty awesome boss music. The music and sound design is really well done, with some of the series' best tracks. And also some of the series' most atmospheric tracks. Which are just okay. I definitely prefer more high octane beats. The sound design is also fantastic though. The boxes sound crunchy, and a lot of the sound effects sound like they've come straight out of a cartoon. Crash Bandicoot definitely has first game syndrome. There is so much that was improved on in the sequels, making the first entry in some ways feel dated and obsolete. Can I recommend it? Well, not the PS1 version, but seeing as the original trilogy was remastered and put in one big package, you might as well give the first game a go. I hope you've enjoyed watching. I've got plenty of other content if you're interested. Let me know what you want to see next. I'm going to go now and keep searching for the gold in the old.